Hi guys, welcome back and let's talk the Real Housewives of New Jersey reunion part 1. I'm not even going to play my banner today. We're going to get into it because this is going to be a short video, guys. I want to just briefly speak on the subject of the allegations with Joe allegedly visiting Teresa one time while she was incarcerated upstate, and that was only to do the filming of Teresa Checks In. I just want to touch base with all of my subscribers first before we get into the entire breakdown of the reunion. This is one of the things that I want to address and debunk for you guys, only because I am very familiar with the visitation process for anyone that's incarcerated state or federal institution. Okay, so a couple of things. Melissa is alleging that Joe did not visit his sister in prison more than the one time to film because he wasn't on the list. This has been her go to many times. We've heard it during the season. I did a video on it on my Instagram way back, but my Instagram was hacked, as you guys all know, so it's no longer there. So let me run through the visitation process for you guys really quickly. But of course, before we get into all of that, guys, everything in this video is alleged. Make sure that you hit the like button. It helps circulate my videos, and make sure that you subscribe to my channel and put your notifications on, because I don't set if I have tea that I'm coming on with, I just come on. I don't set like a what is it called, like a broadcast, and I just come on and give it to you guys right away. So you should make sure that you're setting the notification bell and getting those notifications set up. Okay, let's get into this. First of all, the visitation process inside an institution is not something that anyone who is incarcerated has much control over. Okay. If you want to visit someone in an institution, you have to go online, and anyone can go do this. You can look this up. It's very simple. Just put into Google, how do I visit my family at a federal institution? It's going to take you to a site where you can pick which institution, and from there's going to be called what's visitation forms. Those forms would be needed to be printed out somewhere, completed, and usually they ask for something that shows a proof of address and also identification, a copy of the identification. All of that is sent in together at one time to the inmate's case manager. The case manager from there will approve or deny the person to be added to the visitation list. Okay? So let's think about this for a second. If you're incarcerated, guess what? You don't have access to a copy machine. She can't go get online in prison and get visitation forms and send them home to Joe. It's likely that the prison is not just handing out free packets of printed paperwork and forms for inmates to send home to their friends and family. The only time there's any sort of an exception made with the visitation process and the visitation list is when they first are put into admissions before they have their security clearance. There's a small window of like 15 to 20 days where the state or the institution will allow like an emergency contact to be added to the person's visitation, mainly for money purposes, to be able to add money to the inmate's books for phone time, emails, stamps, because all of the emails, when you see Joe and Teresa talking about emailing back and forth, what it is it's a system within the institution, but it's not free, guys. Prison's not free. Okay, you have to pay every time you send an email. You buy stamps. Okay, so they're not emailing for free. You have to have someone put money on your account, and then you go purchase the stamps, right? So basically, without getting completely off subject here, what I'm saying is it would have been her visitor's responsibility to print out visitation forms, complete them, provide the information that the institution is requiring for proof of address and identification, and send those in, and then follow up. Okay, you can't just walk into a prison for a visit. It doesn't matter if you have a camera crew with you or not. Okay, you have to schedule visits. So there, once he sends in the paperwork, he would have to wait for approval or denial, which he would only find out if he called the institution. The institution's not going to call him and say, we're denying you, we're approving you. Reasons why this is so serious, for instance, I worked for unit manager, and so out of the entire institution, there's 2 unit managers. They're basically below the deputy warden, and below the unit managers are the case managers. The case managers are approving and denying people's visitation lists. Well, there was a situation where this person was on several of the women's visitation lists. He was from Cleveland, but he was maybe on a girl's list who lived in Cincinnati, and maybe on another girl's list who lived in Dayton. Okay, like why would you, how would you know this guy from Cleveland? Meanwhile, the institution is within Cleveland, right? So it had been slipping through the system, and he had been getting added to visitation lists either from an officer inside the institution, or case managers were just pushing it through, not looking into him, because come to find out, he had done like 20 years for, it was, I want to say, like prohibiting prostitution, something along those lines, basically running like a prostitution ring. He was likely probably what you would consider a PIMP, seriously. And he had someone within the institution recruiting women, and he was getting on their visitation list, and he was coming and putting money on the phone, putting money on their books. And that is so that when they get out, they go to him, and that the whole process starts over again. Okay, so this is why it's important that people be screened and vetted before they go on a person's visitation list. Okay, and that particular instance is just because of women, but you have, you have racketeering, you have people that are organized crime. You can't have people that are incarcerated doing business maybe with other people who have related ties to illegal activities. These are just things that the prison has to scan for, that people on the outside aren't necessarily aware of. Okay, so when it came time for the Teresa checks in, Joe Judice likely got all of his paperwork together, sent it into the prison, followed up on it, and then of course Bravo would have had to have gotten an okay from the institution to even go there and film. Okay, the institution's also going to give you your dress code for your visitors. Your visitors are not just going to show up willy-nilly and they're going to call you out of the institution. You are stripped before your visit, stripped in and out, which means you go in a room with an officer, you completely take everything off, shake off your clothes, dress back up, go have your visit. When you're done with the visit, the officer escorts you out. You again undress, shake out all of your clothes, dress again, and then you are escorted to your unit. Therefore, not anyone can just show up willy-nilly and have a visit with somebody that's incarcerated. You have to schedule that. Okay, and they have the option of not letting them film. They could have told them no. Like, however, that federal institution is known for having high profile inmates. We know Martha Stewart was there, and many other people. So they're probably used to dealing with media, and they're a little bit more comfortable, whereas maybe an institution that's not, has never dealt with something like that before, they're not going to be as welcoming to a Bravo camera crew, right? However, again, this was providing an income for Teresa and Joe, but we have to remember that the comment was made on MG's podcast, and anyone can go back and listen to this, guys, and you can listen to the tone, you can listen to how the conversation was had, but it was very much like Teresa and Joe didn't have anything. Joe Judice says Juicy Joe was not working at the time, which is an insult in itself. The man had 4 kids. His wife was incarcerated. Um, I'm sure, and he was doing side jobs. I mean, he was probably doing the best that he could with what he had. So I don't think it's always fair to that's insulting to, especially to an Italian man, right? We all know that if we're talking about Italian families, let's talk about how much of an insult it would be for you to say that the man isn't working or taking care of his family, and if it wasn't for you and your wife, there may not have been food on the table, right? That is something that's going to upset Teresa and Joe, and it would upset likely Joe and Melissa if it were the other way around. But regardless, we can get into that on another level, another subject. I just wanted to let all of you guys know that this is the visitation process for all of the institutions, federal or state, it doesn't matter. You have to be added to the visitation, and that's only by going through the correct chain of command and instructions given to you by the institution. Teresa would have had no control over her visitation list unless if they had like a cap. Like sometimes they'll have you, because you have to understand, sometimes people are lifers. So you might have somebody that visited you in 1985 and now your family's grown, you have more people on your visitation list. Regardless, there might be like a cap of 12 to 15 people on a visitation list. So in that instance, a case manager would likely go get the inmate and speak with them and talk to them about, oh, this like granny was on there, we'll take her off, she's pat, whatever the case may be. They'll take it down, they'll talk with them. So there would have been no chance that Teresa had any sort of control over him getting his visitation forms, him completing his visitation forms, and him sending them into the institution to be approved for the visitation. She would have had no control over it. And let's also like remember, like this is probably the most traumatic thing that ever happened to her. It's a very traumatic thing for people to go away like that, especially moms. I think that we can say, we know a lot of single moms out there that do a great job, and we know that any single parent can raise a healthy, happy child. But there's something about the mother-child bond that when the mother, isn't present, I think that there's definitely a different sort of bond than with the father necessarily, right? So, for example, and not to like debate any of this, but like the girls have been able to function with Joe being away and going to the Bahamas, and they're all super successful. But that's left a lot of Teresa to pick up, like what he couldn't do from a distance. And they've still been able to raise healthy, successful. We think all of her children seem very successful. It's like my throat. I have a dry cough. And I lost my train of thought, guys. So, anyways, it can be a very different experience for a female leaving her children and going away than it might be for a male. Maybe not better, maybe not worse, just different is my point. And so, in that being said, I think that we have to remember this was probably the worst time of Teresa's life, as it would be for anyone that's going to prison for any amount of time. And that is when you reach out to be a friend or an encourager or whatever that is to your friend or family, right? If Teresa, like hypothetically, if she had control, I don't know. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. She didn't have any control over her visitation list. It does make it feel like Melissa knows that and she's just repeating it and saying it because it sounds as if it's Teresa's fault that he wasn't on the list. But in all actuality, he had to do all of the legwork because, again, Teresa was incarcerated. She had limited funds, limited everything. She wouldn't have been able to help him with that process. And he obviously didn't take any initiative until they filmed Teresa Checks In. And so I just think it's important that everyone understand that. And we're going to do another video, of course, talking about the reunion, but I just wanted to clear up the visitation to let you guys know that I think that we might have Melissa in a little bit of a fib here. So, all right, guys, stay tuned. I'm going to try to do a live too today, but I don't know if I'm going to have time. But if not, I'm still doing a part on the